Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? Adjamin Synergy coming to you guys here today with another deck tech. So today we're going to be taking a look at a standard deck, and it is Selesnya Aggro. So for you guys that are unfamiliar with Selesnya, it's a guild that focuses on green and white. So that's exactly what we're looking at here today. The deck focuses on a lot of really powerful creatures, very able-bodied creatures, and it's really fast-paced and quick on its tempo. So we're going to break it down, but before we get to that, if you guys have any suggestions for decks that you would like to see, please leave that down in the comments below, and I'll take it into consideration for future deck techs. So the first thing that we're going to be taking a look at is the mana base, and we're starting off with Temple Garden. So we're running a play set of Temple Garden for green and white. From there we have Sunpetal Grove, so we're running a play set of this as well. So more green and white production. Dual lands are fairly important. From there we have utility lands, so we have Gavony Township, so we're using 2 of these. So Gavony Township is awesome because for 4 mana, for 2 generic, 1 green, 1 white tap, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So later game it lets you utilize the mana that you have left over, or if you can't do anything else for the turn, you have Gavony Township to give a benefit to all of your creatures that's permanent, or at least as long as they stay on the battlefield. But Gavony Township is definitely really awesome, very useful. From there we have our basics, so we're running 8 forests, and then we have 6 plains. So total we have 24 lands. Very basic as far as decks go. It's not really undershot or more lands than a deck would usually run in cases of control or anything like that. It's pretty average. From there, we're going to be taking a look at our creatures. So we have them in ascending order. So Avacyn's Pilgrim is first. Mana Dork, 1/1 for 1, and taps for white mana to our mana pool. Ideally, we want to drop either him, if I can get him, there we go. Put him off to the side here. Him or Arbor Elf, so another mana dork, 1/1 for 1 green, and he taps to untap a forest. Ideally, we want to get him turn 1, and then turn 2 we can play a turn 3 card that we couldn't play without the mana dorks, but they're fairly good. They do die to very easy wrath stuff like Bonfire of the Damned, but as soon as we get our stuff into play, once we get to turn 2, we play our turn 3 card and move on from there. We usually have the upper hand, and it doesn't really matter if it's bonfired a couple of turns later because we already have the stuff that we need out onto the battlefield. Alright, so next we have Strangleroot Geist, so we're running a play set of him as well. Very good aggro creature, double green. The double green's very greedy with him, but he's a 2/1 with haste and undying, so whenever he dies, he comes back with a +1/+1 counter. And then we have Thalia. So Thalia is very good. We're running a playset of her as well. She's a 2-drop, 2/1 first strike, and non-creature spells cost 1 generic more to cast. So this is going to be good against mid-range decks, control decks, a lot of decks that are going to be focusing more on non-creature spells than they do on creature spells, and Thalia is going to just really make it hard for them to play stuff, especially even when you're playing up against decks that use utility burn to get rid of creatures. It's going to be harder. They're going to have to invest more mana into actually getting rid of a card like Thalia, but Thalia is very good. The first strike is good against game 1, against other aggro, but ideally you want to have her against control, mid-range, anything that plays a lot of non-creature stuff. From there we have Loxodon Smiter, so he's a 4/4 for 3 mana, can't be countered, and if for some reason he would be discarded by an ability or an effect that your opponent controls, he's put onto the battlefield instead of your graveyard, so he's very good with that. We have a playset of the Smiter. If you can drop him turn 2, he's really nice. He just gets there. From there, we have Silverblade Paladin, 2/2 for 3 mana, Soul Bond, and as long as he is paired with another creature, both of them have double strikes, so you can go turn 2 Smiter, turn 3 Paladin, and maybe like Rancor on the Smiter, and you just bash in for a whole lot. But Silverblade Paladin is definitely really good. On his own, he swings in for Double Strike as well, as long as he's soul bonded, and with the Smiter, he's really nice. But ultimately, anything you pair him with is going to be much bigger of a threat, so he's definitely really good for his 3 mana. From there, we have Restoration Angel, so we're running 2 of the Restoration Angel. 3/4 for 4 mana, flash flying. Whenever it enters the battlefield, you can exile target non-angel creature you control and then return that card to the battlefield under your control. So it's good for rearranging how you want to soul bond stuff with Wolfir Silverheart or Silverblade Paladin. Also, it can reset Strangleroot Geist if he has a +1/+1 counter on him, which it's not huge, but it's there. It can definitely mean the difference between winning or losing if it comes down to it. Restoration Angel also resets Rancor as well, because Rancor is going to go to the grave, it goes back to your hand, and then you can use Rancor on something else, so it's good for that as well. But Restoration Angel is combat shenanigans more so than anything else, because you can block, use Restoration Angel to blink something, and you take no damage unless they have Trample, which isn't always relevant. From there, we have Wolfir Silverheart, so we're running 3 of him in the deck, so he's really good. He's a 4/4 for 5 mana, Soul Bond, and as long as he's paired with another creature, each of those creatures gets +4/+4. So as long as he's bonded to something else, he's going to be an 8/8, and something else is going to be 4 power and toughness bigger. So, I mean, he's a powerhouse card. He's really huge, especially if you can drop him earlier than turn 5. He's really amazing. So, Wolfir. We have 1 Sigarda, Host of Herons, so she's a 5/5 for 5, flying hexproof, and spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause you to sacrifice permanents. Good against decks that are running sacrifice type abilities like Liliana of the Veil, but on her own, the hexproof makes her really hard to get rid of, so she's a very good 5-drop, but most of the times we would prefer Wolfir Silverheart. But when it comes to some spot removal and anything annoying that usually tries to get rid of our creatures, Sigarda is there. Sigarda is definitely really nice, so she's really good just on her own. And then if you throw on Silverblade Paladin bonded with her or something like that, it just makes it even better. From there, we have our non-creature spells, so Rancor, running a playset of it, and it's 1 green. It's not going to set us back if we're running our Thalia game 1. Game 2 and game 3, it's iffy whether we want to keep her. It depends on the builds that we're playing against and whether she's effective or not, but Rancor is definitely really good, and even around Thalia we're able to play it. It gives a creature +2/+0 and trample, and if Rancor is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, we can return it to its owner's hand. So it's really nice because, like I said, you can reset it with stuff like Restoration Angel, or if your creature dies, you just get your Rancor back, and it's really nice. So you get to keep on using it over and over on creatures, and the trample really gets there. So play set of Rancor, and the last card is Selesnya Charm. So Selesnya Charm is really nice at an instant speed, and the green-white does it's greedy for the cost. It's not impossible to play, and you don't really have problems with casting it all the time, but it happens here or there where you might have a problem or two casting it really early on if you need it. But its abilities, you get a buff of 2/2 and trample on a creature. You can exile target creature worth power 5 or greater, or you can put a 2/2 white knight with vigilance onto the battlefield. So it's a versatile card. The removal is really nice, especially if you're playing against stuff like Exalted stacking, and then you can respond with Selesnya Charm, or just big creatures on their own that are 5 or greater. And, I mean, just getting a 2/2 at instant speed at the end of your opponent's turn is nice, especially if you have the board stacked already. So that is the main board for this deck. So now we're going to take a look at the sideboard. Okay, so for the sideboard, we have Triumph of Ferocity. So we're running 2 of these in the sideboard, and it's a really, really good enchantment. For 3 mana, you get this enchantment, and at the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card if you control the creature with the greatest power or tied for the greatest power. So against decks like Control or any other deck that's not going to be matching you in the amount of creatures that you're playing, you pretty much will always have the creature with the highest power. So Triumph of Ferocity is going to let you draw every single turn, unless your opponent drops like a Wrath or something. If it's the case of Control, which this enchantment is really good. If you run into the situation where you're playing against Control and they Wrath, then that's pretty much the only time that you're not going to be able to draw more. But the Triumph is so good just because you're going to keep on drawing every single turn, or at least most of the turns while you have creatures out there. So Triumph is definitely really nice. From there we have Purify the Grave. So Purify the Grave is a pretty self-explanatory card. Most people would assume that it's for any type of graveyard hate, and that's exactly what it is. Anything that's trying to reanimate, work off of graveyard effects, and just mainly Unburial Rites. Unburial Rites is annoying, and you don't want them to reanimate big things that you can't deal with. So 3 Purify the Graves, it's 1 to cast, just 1 white, and then a flashback again, so you can use it multiple times. Purify the Grave is definitely really good against Reanimator. So we have that. From there, we have Faith's Shield. So we're running 2 of these, and Faith's Shield ends up coming in against other decks that run Selesnya Charm, because our creatures are going to be 5 or greater most times, especially with Wolfir Silverheart. So if they drop Selesnya Charm, we want to respond with Faith's Shield and not have a problem. Also, it gives you protection from a color of your choice for that permanent, so it's going to be relevant as well, especially in that Selesnya Charm instance where you're gaining protection from a color, and that color is going to include either green or white depending on what your opponent has on the field and what they're going to be blocking with. So in that instance, it's either going to be green if they have a lot of green creatures, white if they have a lot of white creatures, or just dependent on what you want them to be blocking with or not blocking with. So Faith's Shield is good for that. It's also good for any type of spot removal, Dreadbores and things of that nature. Also Bonfire a little bit, you can get protection from red, but it's not really as necessary. They're going to have to Bonfire for X equaling a decent bit to actually be able to wipe out everything, but Faith's Shield is good for any type of just kind of countering stuff that your opponent's trying to play and is trying to target you with. So Faith's Shield is good for that. Garruk Primal Hunter, so we're running 2 of these, and this is mainly whenever Thalia ends up being dead. So against other types of aggro decks, we can side in Garruk. He's a 5-drop Planeswalker, 3 loyalty. He makes 3/3s with his +1. His -3 lets you draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control, and the -6 is fairly huge because against other aggro, chances are they're not going to be running a huge Wrath ability unless they're a mid-range, and that's kind of their plan, like to just be able to blow up everything and then reset with more creatures, but chances are that that's not going to happen. The -6 is relevant if your opponent can't get rid of all those 6/6s, and you can just overwhelm from there, but making 3/3s and drawing cards is definitely good utility with Garruk, especially when you're siding out Thalia, so you're not going to have the problem of Thalia making him cost more. So 2 Garruks. From there, Thragtusk, so we're running 3 Thragtusks in the side. So Thragtusk is good with Restoration Angel, and it's a shenanigan that you can work off of. It's a little bit slow, it doesn't happen all the time. It does happen here and there, but Thragtusk is still really good against decks that are going to be really quick to try to burn you out, red deck wins and variants of that sort. And you can just get there with Thragtusk. You can just completely nullify the damage that your opponent's been trying to deal to you. And the 5 mana, you can cast them really early on, especially with your mana dorks accelerating you along. So 3 Thragtusks. And then the last card that we have here is Elite Inquisitor. So Elite Inquisitor is a tech choice of mine over Knight of Glory. I like this guy just because against zombies, they're not going to be able to block anything, really. They're not going to be able to block Elite Inquisitor, and it's going to be really nice because he's a 2/2 for 2 mana, first strike and vigilance. You can go off of Wolfir on top of them and just swing in for a lot. And against zombies, they're not going to be able to block. And I think that's the greatest thing, especially the Vigilance. The Vigilance is definitely relevant because once you swing in with him, whenever you're playing against zombies, you can still have him block. And the first strike, I mean, the first strike is going to get there and kill it, but the protection and Vigilance is definitely really, really nice with the Elite Inquisitor, and I like him as tech against zombie variants. He also has protection from vampires and werewolves as well. So, I mean, the Vampire Claws is relevant against zombies because they'll run like Falkenroth Aristocrat, but the werewolf is, I think that's the most irrelevant part of his protection, but like I said, definitely Vigilance and protection from the zombies and vampires is good against the zombie matchups. So they're going to have to use removal to actually get rid of him, and I think Elite Inquisitor is a problem for them, but it's the least of their worries as far as other cards go. So 3 Elite Inquisitors as far as zombies go. So that is the main board and the sideboard for this deck. So if you guys enjoyed this deck tech, please be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe for more Magic the Gathering videos. The entire deck list and the sideboard is going to be down below, so you guys can check that out. And remember to subscribe for more Magic the Gathering videos and other stuff that's going to be going up on the channel in the future. And also be sure to check out, there's a link in the description below with a playlist to all the previous deck techs that I've covered. So, until next time, guys, have a wonderful, fun-filled Magic the Gathering day.